again, Brian Connors. I'm the Acting Assistant Commissioner from Operations Support Command, Queensland Police Service.
Good.
Everyone right?
Yeah.
All right, good morning everyone and welcome along. I'm here to talk about some regulative changes that take effect on the 1st of February this year, in a few weeks' time, in regard to gel blasters that are commonly referred to as replicas or considered to be replicas by members of the community. On the 1st of February, it'll turn into an offence for people to openly carry gel blasters, which could be mistaken or confused to be a weapon or a firearm. What we're asking is people take appropriate precautions to secure those items, to keep them out of sight and to carry them in closed bags and containers so as not to cause alarm. These items, commonly referred to as gel blasters, are possessed by people for use for recreational purposes, the sport of gel balling, and they're also collected by people who collect replica weapons and store them for personal purposes. What we're asking is, after the 1st of February, is for people to take extra precautions to secure their firearms, to not carry them in public, to lock them when they're at home in locked cabinets or storage, and to make sure that people that shouldn't have access to these items, which look like firearms, are out of the way. Over the past few years, police have taken action in excess of 100 times for people who have been located in the community causing distress and concern, carrying these replica weapons, these gel ball weapons. And these changes have been designed to strengthen community safety and to allow people to legally possess these items for approved purposes, but to take those precautions so they don't cause concern and alarm to the community, and so that, importantly from our perspective, police officers aren't confronted with people, for all intents and purposes, who may be armed with firearms in public. Specifically, this allows legitimate users and owners of gel ball weapons, which can be in the form of pistols, rifles, shotguns, long arms, etc., to possess those items, to transport them, to store them, and to use them as part of their recreational activities, club or community membership, or as collectors. That's essentially what we're talking about today. We have initiated a campaign called the Stop and Think campaign that promotes the messaging in line with legislation changes so that people actually stop before they take these items out into public or transport them and think about what these items may do in terms of causing concern or alarm if they're sighted by members of the community. For example, carrying them in the back of a car on a seat, not concealed or covered, could cause alarm to somebody who was to look into a vehicle. Walking down the street and carrying these items on open display will no doubt cause concern and alarm. But we've worked very, very closely with industry representatives and members of the community in regard to developing these changes that safeguard the community whilst allowing the recreational activities to continue, and therefore allow the benefits that the community get from congregating and enjoying sports such as this one, as well as activities such as collecting weapons. Is there any particular questions in relation to the campaign before we move on?
I was just wondering, what's the situation if people are playing in the backyard?
I guess we're talking about people taking all precautions and reasonable care. We would ask that people don't do it in public or in open display or in any capacity that may cause concern. We would obviously expect people not to be out causing alarm, particularly to people around them, but that would be on a case-by-case basis specifically, and we wouldn't ask people to do it in front of neighbours or anything like that. In addition, we wouldn't like to see children in possession of these items walking down the street without a responsible adult or person around to provide supervision, care and guidance. This is really just about making sure people don't see these items in people's possession and become concerned or alarmed when there is really no need to be.
So if you own one of these and you're playing with it in the backyard, would be a risk of getting fined?
I guess what I could say potentially is we don't want people doing this where passing traffic can observe people doing it, or aiming one of these items at a person is definitely practices we don't want to encourage. In discrete activities as part of the gel ball sport, it would be permissible, but we're asking people to take care so they don't put themselves in circumstances where the neighbourhood is exposed to it, or passers-by would be exposed to it and thereby become alarmed. That's all.
Brian, sorry, that when you were mentioning that action's been taken more than 100 times, what was the time frame for that?
Since 2018, police have taken enforcement action in excess of 100 times. There's been more instances of that where police have been called to intervene or take action, but in terms of enforcement action, it's in excess of 100 occasions.
With this new legislation, what are the fines or penalties for anyone who doesn't comply?
Well, they can be quite serious. So, dependent on the circumstances, they can range for periods of imprisonment for 2 years and above. But essentially, at this stage, it's about spreading the message to people that own, possess, use, transport, carry, store these type of items to take reasonable precautions so as not to cause alarm. And can I say, by and large, the people that currently have these items now and use them or have connections with the industry or business do so very, very reliably and very, very competently, and they are not specifically the people that are of concern. We have engaged closely with dealers, suppliers and providers who are and have been sharing the messaging for quite some time, including brochures with purposes, displaying posters, and in addition, the Queensland Police Service will be releasing an animated video today that will be provided, or you all have access to, as the community will, that actually outlines these changes in fairly simple detail and makes it quite clear what the expectations are.
So I understand you don't need to be a member of an association or a club or have any sort of permit to purchase one of these.
It's essentially we're talking about a reasonable purpose to possess one. So, a member of a sport or association, by way of example, or a collector by way of example, it's a very big industry and it's very popular right around the world.
So, can you buy your kid a gel blaster? Would there be any issue with?
Sorry?
Could you buy your kid a gel blaster? Would that be?
For recreational purposes, essentially, yes, and you can do it with the purpose, providing the purpose is reasonable that you're going to use it for, and that would be for recreational sport, member of a club or community.
Can you import them yourself from overseas?
I'm not specifically aware of that. I don't believe so, but I don't have that information at hand.
Is it for the importers of the retailers who import parts and the guns from overseas? What's the legal standpoint there?
I might get Tony to step in here and talk about the technical components about that, because I'm not familiar with the import process. Bearing in mind it crosses jurisdictions, we're talking about Commonwealth jurisdictions and state jurisdictions, it's quite complex.
Yeah.
So if you want, I can suggest Tony answers that question, or we can come back to it at the end.
Brian, just one more question before you do hand over. For police that respond to these incidents where members of the public might have called thinking somebody has a real weapon, obviously police then have to attend to that also believing someone has a real weapon. How concerning is it for the officers that do respond to this before they find out it's a gel blaster?
Well, obviously we take every every one of these circumstances on their merits at the time, and we do treat them as a legitimate firearms incidents. It can be concerning, and I guess the risk is if the rate of these things was to continue, or there was unrestricted, carriage and usage, it does place people at risk, because there will be circumstances where police respond to incidents which potentially could be one of these items, and there could be fatal consequences, which we certainly don't want to occur. Hence the move to this reform to strengthen the messaging, provide community confidence that we're pushing it out there that people shouldn't openly carry them, shouldn't leave them lying around, should secure them in their premises and residences, and basically lock them away. For all intents and purposes, treat them like they are a weapon.
And on that, I imagine, I haven't seen many of them, but I imagine they do look quite realistic in that you might not know it's replica until you're physically handling it.
From my personal perspective, I would have to say that I would struggle to tell some of these items apart from legitimate firearms. Yes, that would be my understanding of it. I'm sure people who are experienced would be very different to that, but if you're talking about anything less than ideal conditions, so with good lighting in the calm of day, on display, it's very different to late at night, dark, or surrounding circumstances or context that makes it perhaps quite difficult for an easy identification. And we don't want accidents to happen, and that's the greatest concern. So I might hand over to Tony just to talk about that one particular issue, and then hand to our other speakers. Thank you.
Do you just want to repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. As Brian mentioned, it's quite a complex area, the importation area across jurisdictions.
Yes.
So whose responsibility is it to issue a permit to import the parts for the replacement parts for gel glasses?
Yeah, sure. So weapons licensing looks after what's known as the B709 importation permit, but there's no requirement from the Australian Border Force for there to be a permit specifically to parts.
So why are some retailers having their imports seized by Border Force?
Yeah, understood. Obviously, that's a question that's probably better answered by Australian Border Force. Obviously, that's their domain. But gel blasters are very similar to airsoft weapons, which are restricted here in Queensland. So I would strongly suggest that's because of the similarities between those two items that would lead to them being seized.
What's the difference between some parts of a gel blaster being allowed to be imported and the other parts not?
Yeah, again, that's a technical question, and obviously it's a case-by-case scenario for each shipment that might be seized. And so, again, it's something that Australian Border Force do. We, the Queensland Police Service and Weapons Licensing, specifically issue the permits relative to the actual item as a whole, but we do not actually issue anything with regards to the parts. That's something that's looked into by Australian Border Force.
Because according to one retailer, he's had stock seized, $20,000 worth of stock.
Sure.
And he was told by Home Affairs that he needed a permit from PPS.
Yeah. Yeah, so once again, we don't issue permits for parts. We've had a very good relationship with the Australian Border Force, and we have continual conversations with them. And obviously, as a result of gel blasters coming about over the last 2 years, it's something that we've certainly made sure that we're bringing in as many people sort of from the communities themselves, like where we are here today, to get involved. And they've also been present for those conversations with other government agencies like the Australian Border Force. So to answer your question directly, however, that's something that's more to the Australian Border Force to be able to answer, not myself.
But is QPS applying the rules equally across the board between the larger retailers and the smaller ones?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, every application's taken on its own merits, but we've had a very strong relationship with the gel blaster community, which is what's made the Stop and Think campaign come about. And it's because of those strong relationships that we've had, we've actually allowed them to help mould this education campaign over time. So fairness is something that we obviously treat everyone on their own merits in each application. They've been heavily involved, and the proof is in the pudding. We're here today to support that.
Yeah. So do you know why one retailer might be able to import parts that others aren't?
No, I don't.
So you don't have any information about that specific case?
Okay, no, I don't know which one that you're referring to, I'm sorry. And again, Queensland Police and Weapons Licensing, we don't issue permits for parts. So that's, again, it's not something that we look into. Yeah.
Right, anything else for Tony? No, I might invite the Minister, Mr. Ryan, to say a few words. Thank you, Minister.
Thanks very much, Brian, and thanks everyone. And can I acknowledge the team here at M4A1, as well as Ausgel and other supporters of this great sport, this great recreation. A couple of years ago, we started a process about making sure that we could support this industry, to allow it to grow, to ensure that people can continue to participate in this sport, this great recreation which helps people get out and about, enjoy the wonderful Queensland weather, as well as also develop bonds and partnerships with other Queenslanders. But at the same time, we also wanted to enhance community safety. And all the way along, we've been working with industry to land what is a win-win for everyone. Not only do we sustain this industry, secure this industry to allow the sport to continue, but we also formalise what a lot of people were doing anyway, but we formalise a set of safety rules so that individuals, our police and the broader community can be safe and feel safe. So it's really important for everyone to be aware of the formalisation of these rules. The vast majority of people are already doing these things. They are already doing it. So they can continue doing what they're doing. But for those people who aren't doing these things yet, you do need to now comply with a few very simple, very common sense safety rules. So when you're transporting gel blasters in public, make sure they're away from public sight. Put them in a bag. Put them in the boot of your car. Keep them out of public sight so as not to cause alarm or cause confusion, as the Assistant Commissioner mentioned, about what you might be carrying. Some of these gel blasters do, to the untrained eye, look like the real thing, and that creates some concern in the community. So keeping it out of public view will of course enhance community safety and ensure that people can go about their business as they would. The other thing is to secure it at home. And again, a lot of people are doing this already. Put it in a locked bag, put it in a locked filing cabinet, put it in a locked box. If you do have a gun safe, you can put it in your gun safe, but you don't have to. Just secure it at home so that gel blasters don't fall into the wrong hands. And I'll give you a great example. Your young nephew or niece might come over to your place, and if your gel blaster is not secured, your young niece or nephew may pick it up and run around in the community, run around in the street, and that of course could create concern and then cause a police response. So securing at home means that we keep it safe and we keep the community safe. And the final thing, as the Assistant Commissioner went through, make sure you can justify your possession by having a reasonable excuse. And that is as simple as you use it for recreation, you use it for sport, you participate in gel ball activities. If you have replicas, you're a collector, or you're a hobbyist or enthusiast. Really a reasonable excuse is anything that is unreasonable. And so is anything that's not unreasonable. So it's important for you to have that reasonable excuse to be possessing a gel blaster for a legitimate purpose. As I said, the vast majority of people are already doing these things. And for those people who aren't, please get up to speed with the new safety rules. They're common sense rules. They're very simple things to do. We want our community to be safe, and we also, of course, support the gel ball industry, what it does here in Queensland, the opportunities it provides for people to enjoy the Queensland environment, to participate in sport and recreation.
Given other states have banned gel blasters, and there are always people who do the wrong thing, what makes you confident that this will work?
Yeah, well, this is a safety framework, and this provides very clear expectations about what people have to do. If they don't do that, then there are consequences. Of course, there's always consequences when you don't abide by the rules. But we made it very clear from the beginning that we wanted to enhance community safety, as well as also ensure that there was a future for gel ball in Queensland. And we've landed that. We've got good support from industry around the safety framework, good buy-in already. They've been doing a lot of promotion around the gel ball community about implementing those safety rules, complying with the common sense rules. So we think we're in a really good position that we've enhanced community safety with this new framework, as well as, of course, supporting the gel ball industry.
Do you think common sense is enough? If I want to cause trouble, I'm just going to lie, surely.
But that applies to everything. That applies to everything, of course. But our police are well trained. Our police often have to have conversations with the community about a whole range of activities, interrogating why people might be doing one particular thing or another, not just connected to gel ball. So I'm confident our police are well placed to establish the right inquiries when they come across people who might not be complying with the safety framework. But at the end of the day, people have to establish that they have that reasonable excuse for having possession of a gel blaster, and it can be as simple as saying, I'm a member of a club and I'm on my way to participate. Could be you're on your way to participate in a recreational activity, and certainly if you're complying with the other expectations around safety, like you've got it in a bag or you've got it in a box and you've got a place for to store it at home, the police will be obviously considering that as a contribution to their assessment around whether you've got a reasonable excuse or not. If you're complying with the other rules, it's a good indication that you're actually complying with the reasonable excuse rule as well.
Do you need to give PPS more resources to A, police these new laws, and B, to be issuing permits for the implementation?
Yeah, no, we're very satisfied with the work that we've been doing to date, bearing in mind that there has been a number of incidents over the last few years which QPS have been responding to appropriately, because there are existing laws in place around people using items that look like firearms in menacing ways, and we've been responding appropriately to those. We've announced a big reform of weapons licensing branch anyway. That was announced only a few weeks ago, and we're working with industry to implement those recommendations. And this is about making sure that we have the best weapons registry and the best weapons licensing branch in the nation. So we're confident we're on a good pathway there to not only enhance community safety with this new framework, but also enhance the work of the Queensland Police in enforcing any new safety framework.
Do you know how many gel blasters there might be around the state?
Well, they haven't been regulated beforehand, but there are many hundreds of thousands, if not millions, in the state. Not every Queenslander would have one. In fact, many Queenslanders would never have seen one. But for those that do participate in gel ball, I know that there are some people who take it very seriously and are really passionate enthusiasts about it, and they may have more than one. And they, of course, participate in the sport and the recreation on a very regular basis, daily, weekly. So this is about the safety framework supporting that recreation activity that people so passionately participate in already, but also enhancing community safety. Okay. We've got some of the passionate enthusiasts right here.
Thanks, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dan Tyne, so I'm the director of Ozgel, a wholesaler in the industry. Now, we've been working with Queensland Police Service and the Minister's Office for the past 2 years to support their Stop and Think campaign. We do support the framework they're introducing. That framework actually legitimises our industry, which is a real positive for all the employees. A few more positives that we have for the industry as well. Hundreds upon hundreds of Queenslanders are employed in the gel blaster industry. There are thousands of players, hundreds of fields, and it's an industry that's generating hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer money. Any questions?
Do you import parts for replacement parts?
Yes, so myself through my business partners as well, we do import replacement parts. Have you got a specific question?
I'm wondering how you get a permit to import parts.
So with the parts, as was alluded to by Tony Taktovich, there aren't actually permits that are provided to us for parts. So at present, that's all controlled by ABF, and that's who.
Do they give you a permit?
No, they don't.
Yeah, no, they don't. They don't allow the parts through?
No, so some parts do get through, but generally it's down to the essentially the officer of the day that's inspecting those parts as to whether or not they allow them through. But it is a bit of an issue that we are working on with them.
What's the solution there? Because there are retailers that have got tens of thousands of dollars, if not more.
Absolutely, yeah, I'm very familiar with the retailers you're speaking of there. So at present, I know there's a lot of work in the background between Queensland Police Service and the ABF to try and streamline some of these procedures and avoid those sorts of circumstances from occurring in the future. Unfortunately, they have happened, but we hope that in the future that this is a very minimal occurrence, so it doesn't affect any of the hard-working business operators in Queensland.
Dan, when there is incidents where there might be a large police response to someone who isn't doing the right
Yes.
thing with a gel blaster. How does that make those of you feel who are in the industry and are trying to do the right thing?
Oh, look, it's extremely frustrating because there is a large portion of us in the industry that do the right thing, and we do work with all the various agencies. So when we do see that, we do try to separate ourselves from them. They're not part of the same group of people, and we support Queensland Police and any response they provide to such circumstances.
Do you understand, I guess, the concern from a community member who might not know what it is that they're looking at?
Yeah, absolutely, totally understand, and that's why I think that things like the Stop and Think campaign that QPS have really pushed out there, it's really the way forward with this sort of thing, because that just provides that education that I think is required across the state, so that people understand and are less likely to panic when they see a gel blaster.
What's your reaction to the new law?
To the new law, look, initially it was met with some scepticism throughout our community. However, I think as we've worked through this and had various meetings with Queensland Police and with the Minister, I think it's great. You know, as I said before, it provides that little bit more legitimacy for our industry, and it's great to have a regulatory framework to work within, so that we can actually take the risks that we want to take as a business.
And do you think it will affect like gel blaster owners and shop owners?
No, as far as the gel blaster owners and shop owners go, I think it's going to have a really positive effect. So I think that it's going to make them a little bit more comfortable importing gel blasters and gel blaster parts, because they know they can do that and know that they've got the full support of the regulatory framework.
And what do you say to people who think gel blasters are dangerous?
I say come out and have a game. Come have a game with us, come into one of the stores, let us show you, and I'm sure you'll have a good time.
What are your thoughts on the way that gel blasters are regulated in other states in terms of acquiring licenses and permits and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so at present, we're only really concentrating on Queensland. However, you know, I know that there have been some recent issues down in South Australia. There isn't an awful lot I can comment on with that, because that is a case that's before the courts down there, and and that's it's quite a contentious issue within the industry.
What about Victoria, New South Wales? As I understand it, there is a ban unless you have a permit. Is that
Yeah,
the
that's
right
correct.
approach in your opinion, or is that
Yeah.
just a step too far?
So look, I think it's more an issue with social acceptance. So it's something that we'll continue to work on over the coming years and months. And I think that in time, we may actually see gel blasters start to appear in those states, provided we can work with relative agencies down there.
Would it be a good thing to do to try and encourage, the participants of gel ball games to use or to buy gel blasters that don't look so real?
Absolutely.
Or is the realness of it?
Yeah, so totally understand that, and look, there are moves out there from some retailers to produce and manufacture gel blasters that don't look like real guns, which I know is one of the primary concerns. So for those who are concerned, there is that option out there that actually exists now to purchase gel blasters that look like toys.
Because that would solve the whole problem, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
So,
Well, look, the reality is for the regular enthusiast in Australia and for the regular collector, they actually prefer gel blasters, that have that element of realism to them. So that's something that you're never going to get rid of. It's a bit of a human thing. However, when it comes to gel blasters that look like toys, they're less appealing, so it's less likely to be successful in our industry, which is why we've spent so much time working with the police and the minister to get this framework underway.
what do you think industry's worth in Queensland?
It would be anywhere upwards of $200 million easily.
What sort of checks do you do when someone comes in to buy one of these gel blasters?
So at present, a lot of that comes down to the staff that are actually working in the store. So it's a bit of a judgment call. Many of the staff members that work in these stores essentially receive training to really pick up on troublemakers, so to speak, that come into a store. And every operator has the right to reject a customer if they are coming in looking like they're about to cause trouble.
Is there an age limit on purchasing a gel blaster?
So generally speaking, for most gel blasters, it's 14 plus.
Any
All right. well, I'd like to introduce actually one of the players from the community. So this is someone who's a captain of a local team and plays competitively in Joel Ball.
Good morning, my name is Niall Clark. I am the captain of the Osgel Slop Raiders. We're one of the sponsored teams here in South East Queensland, sponsored by Dan from Osgel. On a player's perspective, the new regulations that are coming in, it's pretty much a common sense thing. Most people are already doing it. So for the people that aren't doing it, it's not hard to get a bag and to conceal your gel blasters that you've already got. It's actually quite simple. Common sense needs to be applied. But for the frameworks that the QPS are putting in place, it's actually a good thing for the players as a whole, because it gives us something to work inside, and it sort of stops the people that don't know where the guidelines sit, gives them something to work inside, so then we can move forward with promoting the sport in Queensland, and then hopefully we can further our sport into other states. I know that there's a lot of players, especially in South Australia, with all the shit that's going on, with all the stuff that's going on down there at the moment, they don't like the way that their laws have been dealt with. And I know some people that have actually moved to Queensland so they can just continue to play the sport. So with common sense laws being put into place, hopefully we can expand our sport outside of Queensland, because I know there's a lot of people here that love our sport. It's heavily involved throughout the community. Yeah.
There's a lot of camaraderie between players. How would you describe what Joel Ball, the game, the community has provided?
When I started playing gel ball, I was still in the military. So for me personally, it was another family away from my family. A lot of the people that I met inside my team, like I met Dan, I used to work with him in Army, and I started playing with him, and then we sort of gathered a few more people that we didn't really know. It was a bit of a misfit group, and that was 3.5 years ago, and now we are such a really tight-knit family that we support each other through thick and thin. We've had some medical issues we've had in our team, and we've just really come together to support each other. And I know there's a lot of other professional teams out there that have done the same. A lot of them are really, really tight-knit groups.
Do you see it as a way of actually keeping people out of trouble?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a way of keeping like potential troublemaker kids away from whatever road they're going down and getting into something that can be beneficial to moving forward in their life. Absolutely.
As someone who's never even seen gel ball we play, can you explain, I guess, what it is that you think makes it so popular?
Well, a lot of people see video games and they see like Call of Duty and games like that. Gel ball is a way of doing that, but in a friendly manner outside your bedroom. Getting out, being active, keeping fit. There are a lot of people that use it as a distraction from their everyday life, just to get away from the monotony of going to work 9 to 5. But it is a good way to build camaraderie and get away from just your work life, I guess.
I guess do these new laws, if everyone's following them, kind of allow you to have it just treated like any other sport?
Yes, it will. It's like every sport's got its own set of guidelines. Yes, ours will be a little bit different because we're playing with weapons that look like weapons. But yeah, if it continues the way it is with the guidelines that have been put in place, absolutely, it'll be just like every other sport in the state.
So do you feel like the sport is over-regulated in other states in comparison to Queensland or what's your view on that?
Yes, it is over-regulated, but there needs to be a culture shift to sort of assist other places to understand that it's not a bad thing. From a player's perspective, if you apply the basic common sense rules like the QPS are doing here, it can flourish within the nation quite easily. But every state's got their own laws, and that's what you have to run with.
All right.
Cool.
That's it. Anyone think further? We'll wrap it up there. Oh, sorry.
One more.
Good morning, guys. My name's Kevin Bryan. I'm a member of the gel ball community. Do a lot of social media, also known as Kamikaze. Just wanted to say that we're really happy that with the work of the Queensland Government and QPS as to do with the legislative changes, very happy with it overall. Essentially, as everyone else has already mentioned, there's no change to the community itself. Most people are already doing this stuff. Most people are already aware that these are the things that they need to do. Obviously, this is a growing industry, so there are people that are constantly coming in. There are people who are constantly being educated in the fact that QPS have gone ahead and they've legislated these changes in to ensure that for those of us who play, nothing changes. For those people who do intend to do the wrong thing with these things, the penalties can be very severe, and we support that 100%. Is there any questions?
I guess the people that are doing the wrong thing, do you believe that in most instances, they're not actually involved in Gel Blaster sports? They're more so people that are actively looking to do the wrong thing?
I would completely agree with that, and I would also say, yes, there are the element of troublemakers out there. They are a very, very, very minute part of the larger group that owns Gel Blasters. However, most of these people don't usually hang around long. You don't usually see them out of games, and I can say that the community is absolutely massive, and the amount of people who are doing the wrong things with these blasters are actually a very small, minute amount of people. And with this new legislation, being able to, when people come into shops and they give unreasonable excuses for wanting to own them, then the shop obviously then has legislation to back them up to say, you know, we're not going to serve you, we're going to refuse service.
All right. I guess in summary, thank you all. Those resources will be made available through police media and the police website. So the animated video will be available, as well as the flyers online, and there's also flyers on display in the store in regard to the Stop and Think campaign. So thank you.